I was never the perfect husband. I worked long hours, 48-hour shifts at the fire station, sleepless nights, meals out of vending machines, all to build a future for me and Kelly. She was my world, and while I was out risking my life, she was building a different one with him, our neighbor. I met Kelly at a cafe on Roosevelt Avenue. She wore a green sweater and smelled like orange zest. Since that day, I haven't been able to drink coffee without thinking of her. We had a cozy married life, or so I thought. She used to say she missed me at home, and I naively believed missing me meant staying faithful. Then there was Troy, 32, fit, divorced, lived just over the fence, helped mow the lawn, brought over beers, grilled burgers with us. I trusted him. Kelly did too. I thought she only saw a friendly neighbor. That night, I was supposed to be on duty, but a downline changed the schedule, and I was sent home early. It was cold. I came in quietly. Her coat was in the hallway. The air smelled of expensive cologne, not mine. Voices came from the bedroom. Hers and his. I didn't walk in right away. I listened. For a minute. Then two. Then I opened the door, and the world I had built shattered in a heartbeat. Listeners, what would you do if you saw the person you love in the arms of a traitor? Would you forgive or walk away in silence? Her eyes widened the second she saw me standing in the doorway. Troy didn't even move. He didn't cover himself. Just sat there, frozen, while I stood, fists clenched, temples pounding. The room was silent except for their breathing and my heartbeat, thundering like a fire alarm. "Derek," she whispered. I didn't reply. I just stared. Not at her. At him. Listeners, is there anything more painful than being betrayed by your lover and your friend? I didn't punch him. Didn't scream. I turned and walked out. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew one thing. I wasn't coming back. Sitting in my truck parked by the pier, it hit me. This pain? It wasn't even the worst part. The worst would come tomorrow, and the day after. Waking up and remembering not her smile, but Troy's face in my bed. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in my car, watching the waves and replaying every moment. How we built our home. How she laughed when I first told her I loved her. Now, all of it felt like a lie. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. What do you think, listeners? Does a cheater deserve a second chance? Or a lesson they'll never forget? The morning was foggy, in every sense of the word. I woke up in my truck, jacket draped over me, neck sore, and my mind begging to pretend none of it had happened. But memory, it's a stubborn thing. It won't let you forget, even when you'd rip the thought out of your brain if you could. I didn't answer her calls. She sent me 3 messages. First, "We need to talk." Second, "Please." Third, "I messed everything up." Yes, Kelly, you really did. I could have gone to a friend's place, but shame kept me in that truck. I was Derek, the guy people looked up to. Now, I was just a man cheated on in his own bed. It's not just the body that gets betrayed, it's trust. That's the deepest cut. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not that morning. But something in me shifted. I started replaying every moment. Why Troy? When did it start? Did she ever really love me? And most importantly, how do I make him regret it? Because Kelly, she just stumbled. But Troy, he walked into my life knowing exactly what he was doing. This wasn't rage. It wasn't even impulse. It was clarity, a seed planted in silence. No yelling, no outburst, just intent. Do you believe in karma, listeners? Or maybe that revenge is a form of justice too? Because I wasn't the same Derek who used to bring her flowers anymore. I went to the gym, not because I wanted to work out, but because I needed to feel pain, real physical pain. I lifted weights until my arms trembled. Each rep felt like a punch, not to him, but to myself. I wanted to burn the weakness out of my body. And as I strained, his face returned to my mind. So smug, so relaxed, like someone who had never faced real consequences. That's when I decided he needs to learn that life doesn't let you walk away untouched. Not with fists, not loud and messy. I didn't want to lose control or end up in court. But he had to lose something he valued, his comfort, his false peace, his little world where he destroyed mine and kept smiling. I started gathering information. Troy worked in insurance. He bragged about bonuses, his perfect client reviews. I knew his reputation mattered more than anything. And Kelly, she kept reaching out. Texts, voicemails. I listened. I never answered. Her voice trembled. There was fear behind it. And part of me enjoyed that fear. Another part still hurt. Tell me, listeners, does pain justify coldness? Or is that just another mask for betrayal? I made myself a promise. I would do this quietly, carefully, and he'd remember every detail. Every revenge story starts with silence. Not shouting, not violence. Just that moment when the heart goes numb and the mind turns cold. And in that silence, I moved. I visited the website of Troy's company. After a few clicks, I found a customer feedback page. Then a public forum where clients left reviews. That's when the idea hit me. What if I chipped away at his reputation? I created a few accounts under different names. I wrote reviews about shady deals, payout delays, rudeness. I never said anything illegal, just enough to spark doubt. And in his industry, where trust is everything, a little doubt can set fire to an entire career. A few days later, I checked again. His profile was removed from the main agent list. Looked like it worked. And Kelly, she came by the house again. She looked like the woman I first fell for. No makeup, old hoodie, eyes full of regret. But I didn't open the door. Not yet. Listeners, have you ever found peace in the silence where someone else drowns in their guilt? I wasn't broken anymore. I was calculating, focused, and every step I took was meant to bring him closer to his fall. This was only the beginning. He still had no idea what it felt like to lose everything he thought was untouchable. But I knew this wasn't enough. Too easy. He needed more than just a hit. He needed to lose what makes a man feel in control. Balance. Confidence. Peace. I drove to his office parking lot, sat in my truck, watching from across the street. He came out in a navy blue suit, smiling like nothing had happened. And that's when it hit me. He didn't know. Didn't suspect a thing. Good. I wanted him to enjoy that comfort a little longer. To believe the storm had passed. Because the real blow, the one that hurts, comes when you least expect it. That night, I texted Kelly. One sentence. You have 3 minutes to tell the truth. All of it. From the beginning. She replied in 30 seconds. A flood of confessions. Excuses. Emotions. I read them without flinching. She admitted it had been 2 months. Started with a random visit, then a harmless dinner, then more. I wasn't home. They were alone, and she couldn't resist. I didn't reply, just saved everything, because it was part of the puzzle, part of the plan. What about you, listeners? Do you think someone deserves forgiveness if they lied to your face while holding someone else's hand? I wasn't playing the victim anymore. I was building justice, brick by brick. The cafe on Roosevelt Avenue was almost empty. Just a couple of students in the corner, an older man reading a newspaper, and me sitting at the same table where I once pretended to brush her hand by accident. Now I sat upright, calm, with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. She was 7 minutes late. I watched her approach, not confidently, not proudly like she used to. Her shoulders drooped, her eyes searched for mine. I didn't stand. I just looked at her. Straight. Neutral. Derek, she sat across from me. Her voice was soft, like it might crack the moment. Speak, I said. And she did. No drama. No tears. For the first time directly. She said she felt alone, that our conversations had grown shorter, the nights quieter. She didn't try to justify cheating, but she explained it. I listened, not to forgive, but to measure the depth of what we'd lost. It was a mistake. I didn't love him, Derek. It was weakness. I nodded. For the first time in a long while, honesty. Late but real. Now you have a choice, I said quietly. You can pack your things by the end of the week. I won't sue. I won't go to the media. But if I ever see him near our house again, I'll ruin him completely. And you know I will. She didn't argue. For the first time, she was silent. I left the cafe into the cool evening air. It smelled of dry leaves and something close to freedom. No, I hadn't won yet, but I had taken control back. Kelly sat across from me in silence. Her hands were clasped tightly, fingers trembling. She didn't say anything else, just looked at me. There was no defiance in her eyes, no anger, no hope, just quiet recognition of guilt. She knew there were no more chances. I wasn't the man who used to come back with flowers after every fight, and she wasn't the woman I once walked to her door after every date, hoping for one more kiss. This was an adult conversation, dry, final, but honest, between two people who had broken something beyond repair. Together. She nodded, accepting my terms without protest. I understand, she said. I know. I replied and stood up. I didn't want drama. No begging. No one last chance. I just wanted it to end with some dignity. For both of us. When I stepped outside, the sky had darkened. Street lights were glowing in the distance. I felt something inside me begin to let go. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about me. I didn't know what would come next. But I knew this. I wasn't the same man anymore. Not soft. Not fragile. Not someone who breaks from one betrayal. And I still had a debt to settle. One that was waiting. After that meeting, I didn't go home for 2 days. Stayed in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, where no one knew me and the curtains smelled stronger than the memories. It was my buffer zone, a space between who I'd been and who I was about to become. I pulled out my old phone, the one I kept locked in a drawer since my Army days. It still had a few contacts saved just in case life ever turned sideways. I called Jared. Derek? Thought you got married and disappeared for good. Not far off, I said. I need a favor. Not moral support, practical help. Jared had always been a tech guy, borderline hacker. Back when we served, he once accidentally accessed a secure database and found a photo of our general in a swimsuit. We nearly got discharged, but his talent saved us more than once. I laid it out for him, Troy, the affair, the fallout. So what do you need? Jared asked. Nothing illegal. I just want to know where he goes, who he talks to, who he texts. Surveillance. Information. I'll decide what to do with it. He agreed. A day later, I got my first report. Troy had a habit of eating lunch at the same cafe where Kelly and I had our first date. How poetic. He used a corporate laptop but handled most things on his personal phone without a password. Amateur mistake. One I planned to exploit. I knew my next step had to be clean. No yelling. No violence. Just logic. And maybe a bit of good old-fashioned humiliation. I didn't rush. Revenge isn't an attack. It's a chess game, and the best moves are made in silence. I chose not to strike right away. First, observe. Through Jared, I learned that Troy had a new client, a woman named Rachel, who owned a salon downtown. Wealthy, divorced, social media savvy. He had met her 3 times already, under the guise of consultations. I bumped into Rachel by accident. At least she thought it was an accident. I knew exactly where to be and when. She tripped on a step inside a mall. I caught her elbow. Smiled. She smiled back. Conversation came easy. I didn't give her my real name. Just Dave. She had that spark in her eyes, the kind of woman who believes in second chances. And that's exactly what I planned to use. Within days, we were having coffee. She laughed at my stories about the old firefighter job and the crazy ex. I wasn't lying, just bending the truth. All of it served one purpose: to get close to Troy. Through her. I wasn't proud of it. But after what he did, this was the softest way to show him that life bites back, and that yesterday's betrayal often becomes today's consequence. I didn't move fast, but my hand was already hovering above the next piece. Now, I just had to strike right. I didn't expect to earn Rachel's trust so quickly. But life has its irony. Honesty is the best mask when you're hollow inside. She believed me, even trusted me. We saw each other a few times. Then, one evening, she brought up Troy herself. He's a decent advisor, she said, but kind of weird. She smiled. He texts me after meetings, invites me to lunch. I never gave him that kind of vibe. I listened, stayed neutral. Then she said, I actually recorded one of our meetings. I like having proof when men start twisting the story. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. You still have it? I asked, playing the curious but polite guy. She pulled out her phone, played a voice note. Troy's voice, confident, crossing lines. His tone was too personal. Comments that had nothing to do with insurance. Hints. Flirtation. Do you think that's inappropriate? She asked. I think it's unprofessional, I said. Honestly, a little disgusting. I didn't push. Just asked if she could send it to me, just in case. She didn't hesitate. The audio file arrived minutes later, and that was the beginning of the end. That same night, I forwarded it, anonymously, to the corporate email of Troy's firm. No names, no accusations, just the file, the date, and the note. This isn't the first time. You might want to look into it. I didn't wait for a reply, but I knew it would come, and it would hurt. There was no reply for 3 days. But on the fourth morning, at 7:41 a.m., Jared texted me a screenshot. The headline was simple. Company X launches internal investigation into alleged ethics violation by employee. No names, but we both knew it was about Troy. Then things moved fast. His profile was gone from the company website. His LinkedIn deleted. Instagram silent. Then Jared sent another message. He's looking for a lawyer. Might be trying to protect himself or pressure the company. Let him, I replied. The truth doesn't fear light. This time, I didn't feel triumphant. There was no satisfaction, just a strange emptiness. Like I completed a mission, but lost something along the way. Maybe faith in people, or maybe the last bit of who I was before all of this began. I sat in my truck outside that same cafe where it all started, watching strangers pass by, sipping cold coffee, and I thought, this is it, the moment where justice, though quiet, finally lands. I didn't tell Rachel what I'd done. She didn't need to know. This was my war, and it was nearly over. I couldn't reclaim what was lost, but I'd reclaim balance. And myself. It felt strange waking up with no plan. No waiting on Jared's updates. No checking for news about Troy. Just a regular morning. I went back home. Not because I had to, but because the walls didn't feel haunted anymore. Kelly was gone. She'd left quietly, just as I asked. She'd placed the keys on the counter, along with a note. I understand. I won't interfere anymore. The house was empty, but it wasn't cold. I opened every window, let the air move through, rearranged furniture, bought new sheets, light gray, clean, neutral. Funny how something so small felt like breathing again. That week, I went back to the gym, not to burn pain, but to feel like myself again. In a locker room, a stranger approached me. You're Derek, right? The firefighter? Former, I smiled. I'm Alex. I heard you used to volunteer. I could use some advice. And just like that, I was in motion again. Not out of revenge, not as escape, but a step forward. I hadn't forgotten what happened. But for the first time since the betrayal, I didn't carry it with me like a stone in my chest. Maybe I hadn't forgiven, but I'd learned to live with the scar without touching it every morning. I started going for long walks in the evenings. No destination, just movement, just the sound of shoes on pavement and that feeling of space finally opening up again. I passed a bookstore one night, one of those small, family-run places that still had handwritten signs and a sleepy cat in the window. On impulse, I went in. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even read much anymore. But something about the quiet, about pages waiting to be opened, felt right. There was a woman at the counter, mid-30s, auburn hair, reading a worn paperback with a highlighter in hand. She didn't look up at first. Then she smiled, politely, not flirtatiously. That mattered more to me than I expected. We exchanged a few words. Nothing deep, nothing that promised anything. But it wasn't small talk either. It was presence, human connection without weight or history. I bought a book I hadn't heard of. She wrapped it in brown paper without asking. As I stepped back out into the cool night, I felt it, that shift. Not a grand change, just quiet, warm, alive. It wasn't about forgetting Kelly, or Troy, or what they took from me. It was about recognizing that I'd stopped giving them more. More time, more anger, more space in my head. They were just chapters now, not the whole book. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally writing again. Not revenge, not survival, just life. They say closure is a myth. That even when everything is done, when the war is over, when the words are said, when the house is emptied out and silence finally settles, your mind still searches for something more. A last word, a final look, a better ending. But the truth is, sometimes you don't need closure. You just need peace. And that's what I found. Not in a grand revelation, not in an apology that changed everything, not in revenge that rewrote the past. I found it in the way I stopped waking up angry, in the quiet mornings where my chest didn't feel tight, in the laughter I didn't expect to come out of me when someone told a dumb joke. I started volunteering again. Alex and I launched a fire safety program at a local school. Kids asked questions I couldn't always answer, but that didn't matter. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up. I took my mom to dinner. We hadn't sat across from each other since the wedding. She didn't ask about Kelly. I think she could tell there was nothing left to ask. Some nights, I still thought of it all. The betrayal. The sound of her laugh from another room. The moment I opened that door. But the pain no longer stood in the doorway with me. It became background, like a scar. You know it's there, but it doesn't sting when you touch it anymore. One morning I saw Troy again. It was accidental. Grocery store. He didn't see me at first. He looked thinner, less certain. He was arguing with someone on the phone, probably his lawyer or maybe a recruiter. He wasn't wearing that smug smile anymore. He glanced up. Our eyes met. He froze. I didn't. I just nodded once. Not with hate, not with a smirk, just a nod that said, I remember, and I'm still here. That was enough. Later, I found myself back at that little bookstore. The woman, her name is Claire, I finally learned that, was restocking a shelf. She looked up and smiled like I was familiar. This time, I asked her name. This time, I asked what she was reading. And this time, I stayed. We talked for an hour. It wasn't a date. It wasn't a beginning. But it wasn't the end either. It was something in between. Something new. I think that's what healing looks like. Not erasing the past. Not pretending it never hurt. But knowing the pain doesn't decide who you are anymore. I don't need to tell you what happened next. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe everything. But if you're listening to this, I'll tell you this much. You can survive the worst day of your life. You can walk through fire and come out different. Not broken. Not bitter. Just real. And if someone ever makes you forget your worth, remember it's never too late to remember who the hell you are. I did, and I'm still here. They say closure is a myth. That even when everything is done, when the war is over, when the words are said, when the house is emptied out and silence finally settles, your mind still searches for something more. A last word, a final look, a better ending. But the truth is, sometimes you don't need closure. You just need peace. And that's what I found. Not in a grand revelation, not in an apology that changed everything, not in revenge that rewrote the past. I found in the way I stopped waking up angry, in the quiet mornings where my chest didn't feel tight, in the laughter I didn't expect to come out of me when someone told a dumb joke. I started volunteering again. Alex and I launched a fire safety program at a local school. Kids asked questions I couldn't always answer, but that didn't matter. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up. I took my mom to dinner. We hadn't sat across from each other since the wedding. She didn't ask about Kelly. I think she could tell there was nothing left to ask. Some nights, I still thought of it all. The betrayal. The sound of her laugh from another room. The moment I opened that door. But the pain no longer stood in the doorway with me. It became background, like a scar. You know it's there, but it doesn't sting when you touch it anymore. One morning I saw Troy again. It was accidental. Grocery store. He didn't see me at first. He looked thinner, less certain. He was arguing with someone on the phone, probably his lawyer or maybe a recruiter. He wasn't wearing that smug smile anymore. He glanced up. Our eyes met. He froze. I didn't. I just nodded once. Not with hate, not with a smirk, just a nod that said, I remember, and I'm still here. That was enough. Later, I found myself back at that little bookstore. The woman, her name is Claire, I finally learned that, was restocking a shelf. She looked up and smiled like I was familiar. This time, I asked her name. This time, I asked what she was reading. And this time, I stayed. We talked for an hour. It wasn't a date. It wasn't a beginning. But it wasn't the end either. It was something in between. Something new. I think that's what healing looks like. Not erasing the past. Not pretending it never hurt. But knowing the pain doesn't decide who you are anymore. I don't need to tell you what happened next. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe everything. But if you're listening to this, I'll tell you this much. You can survive the worst day of your life. You can walk through fire and come out different. Not broken. Not bitter. Just real. And if someone ever makes you forget your worth, remember it's never too late to remember who the hell you are. I did. And I'm still here. There's a strange peace that settles in when you stop measuring your life against someone else's timeline. When you stop looking for closure and start looking around. At what's here. At what's now. I'd always thought moving on would feel like a finish line. Like crossing something off a list. But it's not. It's slower. Quieter. More personal. Like stitching your own clothes after the fabric's been torn. Claire and I kept talking. Some nights were light. Just banter, stories, simple laughter over coffee. Others went deeper. Fears, guilt, how we both lost pieces of ourselves and people who never intended to keep them. I learned that healing isn't about being strong all the time. It's about being real, letting someone see the parts you usually hide, and choosing not to run when they don't flinch. She told me I carried myself like someone who'd been through fire. I told her I had, but I came out better at knowing what burns and what doesn't. I got back into writing, not for anyone else, just for me. Pages filled with thoughts I used to silence. Letters I never sent. A few even to Kelly. Most ended in the trash. But the act of writing them helped more than I expected. I stopped checking old photos. I stopped counting losses. And I started noticing gains. More sleep. Less noise. A home that didn't echo with regret. Alex and I grew a program. A few more volunteers joined. A local news outlet ran a piece on it. It wasn't fame, but it felt like something real. Something earned. One night, Claire and I stood on the porch watching a storm roll in. It was the kind that shakes windows, but somehow feels calming. She leaned against me and said, "You don't talk about the past much anymore." I thought for a second. That's because it's not where I live now. And I meant it. Some people think justice means revenge. That making someone pay is the only path forward. I learned it isn't. Sometimes justice is just getting your life back. and realizing they don't get to have power over it anymore. The past will always be a part of me, but it's no longer driving. I am. And wherever I'm going next, I'm choosing it, not reacting to it, not running from it, just living it. Finally,